Hey guys and girls, Nathan here, just here with Stephen Sidorovski from Zenith Legal. Thanks for coming on, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Normally I see Steve and he's in a suit and everything, and I think isolation's got him to be casual, mate. But thanks for coming in. Apologies for the delay in the video. I've had some serious technical difficulties here. I've got an old laptop. I've got a laptop that I'm sitting my phone on at the moment. We're ready to go, 8 o'clock, and some reason there's some big issues coming in via the Facebook app. It wouldn't allow the video to record. So thought I'd pop the phone in, so at least we're coming to you live. I know that we're not able to share to the other pages at this point, just due to the fact that it's only allowing me to go to the B.Invested page. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I've got a lot of questions that you guys have been asking through, so I'm gonna go check that out shortly. But yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. For those of you tuning in right at the moment, we've had some technical difficulties. So yeah. Just before we get started, get your questions ready. I'm going to get to your questions shortly so we can ask Steve them. But for those of you that don't know Stephen, how long have we known each other for now? Like over a decade?
Yeah, it's been over 10 years.
Yeah. It's 10 years, over 10 years that we've known each other. Steve's probably done, 80% of my legal work for my portfolio, my purchases. I've seen good lawyers, bad lawyers, used lots of different lawyers, and I know Stephen from many years ago, and Steve's the lawyer that I trust with all my dealings, with all different types of law, which we'll get Steve to talk about later. But yeah, I'll bring your questions through for Steve. But just on a few things regarding the market and whatnot, I did have all my notes on my phone, but unfortunately I'm having to record this from my phone this evening. The first one is something that just came out today, which was an interview. I posted it into birchFEED. For those of you that are in birchFEED, you've probably seen that, regarding Mount Druitt. Who would have thought that good old Mount Druitt would have an 80-metre height building code? So it looks like Mount Druitt's going to be the hub of the West. And when I first started buying out there, doing loans, doing the legal for it, and people were laughing at me. Like, people were like, "This dickhead, why is he buying property out of Mount Druitt?" And people laugh today at us with some of the stuff.
It's going to be a CBD.
So. CBD, who would have thought? Mount Druitt, breaking news, guys. If you're in birchFEED, go check out the post I made earlier. I can see Michael here. I know he's keen. Thanks for sharing that link with me, Michael. That's really cool. The $1 billion revamp on Mount Druitt CBD. 24 hectares of land is being rezoned, and the government's putting money and spending in infrastructure, and it's a crucial part of infrastructure, for Western Sydney for years to come. So I can see Michael here first to reply. Mount Druitt Heights, don't you mean? It is Mount Druitt Heights. Nora, hey, good to see you on board. So yeah, first news out today, Mount Druitt, Western Sydney, spending billions of dollars in infrastructure. My take on that is they're getting these stimulus packages going into blue collar. People laugh at me and they say, why are you buying in these crappy areas over the years? And the thing that I like about these blue collar areas is that they're recession proof. It's important to build a recession proof property portfolio. Half my tenants are probably on settling. Their rent's still coming through. If we look at when they do stimulus like this, they want to make jobs be very readily available in these sort of marketplaces. And looking at what they're doing now at Mount Druitt by stimulating jobs and job growth, they're putting a lot of infrastructure projects in these areas. We talk about this in mentoring. Thanks for sending it through, Michael. I can't see it come through if you're going to text it through, because I've got to record this from my phone this evening, hence the delay. But really cool stuff on that front. In other news, I was just reading an article from good old Scammo, Scammo, the Crime Minister of Australia. He is in the news a lot recently, apart from telling everyone to download their Corona app, Corona crap app. There we go. He's talking about canning the JobKeeper. This is just a spare phone that I had laying around in my office. Doesn't even work, but at least I've got the internet and Wi-Fi hooked up on this. It says here, JobKeeper Liberal MPs want the scheme to end when kids return to school. Liberal MPs are now urging the Crime Minister to turn off the $1,500 JobKeeper payment when all the children return to school amid growing calls to redesign the scheme. Really, really interesting. What will they do with the JobKeeper? I think it's going to be very hard to take this out. We saw in the past, sort of things get implemented, whether it be first homeowner grant that Howard put in the early 2000s. They're still paying out first homeowner grants. Now they're paying you the deposit as well. Taking away JobKeeper, we're going to see more. Like, imagine if they take JobKeeper away, all the zombie companies that are out there at the moment, they're just going to cut staff, and next minute, bam, straight out Centrelink lines. They've got lines up around the building again, and it's not going to be good for for re-election. It's a checkmate situation, right? So, they're screwed. So it's great. We're going to keep this for a while. That's my opinion. Social distancing, I'm thinking, right? We're not 1.5 metre away, but all scam.
We're easing that, yeah.
We're easing back to work. So we've got Steve on here today. My last thing that I want to comment on before I hand it over to Steve. Michael, send your resume in, mate. We're employing, we're recruiting, all different jobs today. We've just got another dozen tables coming in here at B.Invested. Finding it difficult to be in contact with everyone. So we've got about 10 new positions that are going at the moment. Aileen, hi from Queensland. Hope you're doing well. Aileen is from Blink. Hope you had a good day, Aileen. Negative US interest rates. I see something emerging here. Last week, obviously, we did our pre-meeting for May, and we saw that the fundamentals are completely off the table, and we're in a complete sort of debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme, which has gone off the rails. One very important chart that I'm looking at the moment is the the US bond yields. The US bonds are now showing a negative return in January 2021. This could come back as early as September to November this year, so very good possibility. Seeing all these messages come through, so many messages coming through. Thanks for the comments, guys. Keep them coming through. Smash up that like button and make sure that you share it on your pages. Facebook and social media algorithms are not liking us at the moment, so viewer ratings are lowered. It's not getting out there, so if you can share it, tag your mates in, get it out there, that would be really appreciated. But US bonds are showing a negative yield. Seeing the shout outs there, keep the questions coming through, guys, in the comments. Negative US rates, it is a thing which is starting to occur, and I think we will see negative US yields as early as September to November this year, maturing in January to March next year. So the Aussie 30-day interbank change rate is off the table, doesn't work anymore. However, we've still got the negative US rates, and I believe that is going to occur later this year. On that note, I've got a lot of people asking questions. I'm going to try and download Facebook on my this phone, so I can see your comments and questions and reply to yours later. But I thought I'd get Steve on today. Steve handles all different areas of law. I'll let him explain that to you in a moment. A lot of people are asking me questions about how to protect themselves during this time. So some of the things that we've got on as topic today, want to talk about wills. If you don't have a will, then you should get one. If your parents or elderly don't have a will, they should have one. Make sure that you don't, have a breakdown in your family unit if something was to go wrong, God forbid. I can see a question there, Catherine. I'm going to answer Catherine's question here just before we go any further. Will our life insurance cover a pandemic? Will it?
So it depends on what's in your policy, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have to review your policy. If you need to, you can provide the policy to us and we can give you advice on that.
Yeah.
But essentially you have to check the policy details and see if there's anything that's excluding that.
Yeah, good question, Catherine. One thing I was reading recently, right, it's important to look at all the fine details. So if you would like to have Steve look over your insurance policies or whatnot, he's not an insurance guy. He's a lawyer. Steve is our principal lawyer here at Zenith Legal, which is a full-service sort of legal firm that we run. If you do have a question for Steve, just flick an email through to my team and I'll organise a meeting with Steve, whether it's a 15-minute phone chat or whatnot to connect you and help you out with your position. But I was watching this video actually. I think it was a London Real video regarding Donald Trump back in the 90s and before he became president. And that was, he got a loan for like $3 billion or something from Deutsche Bank. And it was amazing because he got a loan. Deutsche Bank, he couldn't uphold his position on the loan, so he actually went and sued Deutsche Bank and then got another area of Deutsche Bank to refinance the loan. And there was a comment that was made, I think it was by Ben Bernanke. It was someone out there that made a comment saying that it was an act of God. It was like September 11 or something, right? It was an act of God what had occurred. Something had gone wrong, and he actually sued Deutsche Bank because of a clause in his loan, right? And I was thinking it's something we should look at. I've got all the boxes over there with mortgage and loan agreements of mine. And luckily we got the water today, guys. In our crystal cups, looks like we have an alcohol, but it's water. But imagine if there's some sort of clause in there saying that if there was an act of God, right? We've had everyone from the government officials, from central banks saying that it's a pandemic and all these things, right? There might be something out there that we could screw the banks on, but who knows? They're good questions. Keep the question flowing. If you got them, we've got Steve here. He's not charging you by the minute here, so it's ask away. But we're going to cover some wills. We're seeing people being stuck in isolation, needing marriage and whatnot, which you handle. So whether you need a prenup or whatnot, we'll get Steve to talk about them. Estate planning, so power of attorneys and whatnot. And I've got some questions to ask around how we can sort of protect one's portfolio. A lot of people ask me on a very regular occurrence, should I be using a trust for asset protection? I've got some views on trusts. I've got other views on how to protect outside the trust under a personal name. Anyone can do it, but it's important to protect yourself and understand the parameters. So Steve can help you on that. But on that note, Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you, and thanks for coming in the office and chatting to everyone about it.
No, thanks for having me, Nath. And it's just obviously uncertain times at the moment, and I've had a lot of clients that have contacted and reached out to us and sort of said, given all the uncertainty, how can I protect myself? How can I protect my family? How can I protect my assets?
Yeah.
So I mean, these are sort of staple items that we recommend that everyone has in place no matter what the economic or the global situation is. But it's important now more than ever to have a valid will if you don't have a will. So obviously in relation to how your assets are going to be distributed upon your death. There's different types of wills that you can get. So you can get a standard will, you can get a testamentary trust will, where basically you set up a trust in your will.
Yep.
So there's form of that's sort of a form of asset protection.
Yep.
It's not for everybody. So if you for example, if you came to me and you said, look, I've got some of my beneficiaries are drug addicts and I wouldn't want them to inherit my assets in a lump sum.
Yep.
A testamentary trust might be for you, because then your trustee, the person that's in charge of the assets, can distribute assets incrementally or by installments. It also has tax advantages as well, so you can speak to your accountant about that.
Yep.
Then you've got, obviously, so you've got your standard will, you've got your testamentary trust will. Another example with testamentary trust wills is if you've got a lot of wealth or a lot of assets, and again, you don't want to download those onto beneficiaries in a lump sum. There could be tax advantages. And also with testamentary trust wills, you have people that say, look, I'm happy for my son or my daughter to get it, but I wouldn't want their spouse to get it, or if something went wrong. And so if you have a testamentary trust will, obviously you can have the beneficiaries that are going to be in that trust, which is your family. It can include spouses of children.
Sorry guys, I'm trying to download the Facebook app on this phone, so I can get to your questions, everyone's questions. So
So basically with those types of wills, how it works is that the trustee has the discretion to pay or to distribute assets to which beneficiaries if and when they see fit. So it's got those advantages, but it does have disadvantages in that you're putting a lot of discretion in this trustee. So if you wanted all your children to have equal share of your estate, that may not pan out if you've got a testamentary trust and your trustee decides to pay it to different beneficiaries in different shares and in different installments.
And what about, like, say for for protection of your assets and planning for estate planning and wills and whatnot, how would one go, right? Like, let's say for instance, if someone has a mum and a dad, like, should that be a family thing that they do? Like, people that are going, oh, what happens if something happens to my parents or whatever? What like, would it be a family thing that they'd do, or would it be individually, or how would you normally suggest someone do their will? Like,
well, everyone has to have their own will, right? So everybody needs their own will, because you can only distribute your assets under your will. As far as your family goes, I mean, you need to then obviously encourage your family to get their wills done as well, because you can get your will done, and then that basically lifts the burden off your family when you pass away and they've got to distribute your assets. But your family should also all have their wills done, because if something happens to them, and then the burden is on you if they don't have a will. So it's in your best interest to, one, have a will, and two, make sure that all your immediate family members have a will as well.
Okay. And what about if, like, someone gets a divorce and they've got a will, like, let's say someone dies and then, like, someone divorces you, and, like, let's say you've got a person, you've got a couple, like a married couple, and then someone else passes, the money goes to the son or the daughter, whoever's in the marriage, or it could be a son and a son, or a daughter day, but whatever it is, the partner, and then someone goes to divorce, can you actually, like, can someone take the proceeds of the will, like, or?
So if it's so say you have a parent.
This is a random question. I had someone ask me the other day.
So if you have a parent that passes away and they've left their assets to their children, and you happen to be one of the children, and you get a third or a quarter of the estate, then those assets then become your assets. So once they're distributed, they're your assets. If you have a spouse and you're married, then those assets then become matrimonial property, so the assets of the marriage. So then if later on, if you separate, well, those assets are basically up for grabs. So what you can do in that situation is, well, not just in that situation, but so we've got, they used to be called Prenups, right? They're called binding financial agreements now. So you can get one of them before you enter a relationship, during or after a relationship. So people...
I know a few people that need them too.
So it's important to get it done. It's a touchy subject, right? So people, you've got to be cautious about how you bring that up. People now are getting...
I've always brought it up, like, Tinder profile, prenup required.
Okay, that's good. Like that's that's one way you can protect yourself. So people are getting into relationships later in life. They've got their own assets that they're bringing into relationships. So it's not like before people get married really young, don't have anything, and build their wealth together. So these are the type of documents that if that was the case, and if you had a major inheritance and you wanted to protect that, subject to your spouse being agreeable to enter one of those agreements, you could put in that agreement that these assets will remain mine in the event that our marriage dissolves.
Okay, cool. And cool. And from an estate planning, like, what would it mean if someone was to, like, say for instance, if someone was incapacitated or like someone couldn't make a decision on themselves, like power of attorneys, and maybe for some of the viewers, like maybe if you can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, estate planning is like taking out an insurance policy, but it's on your life. So it's not life insurance. Sorry, it's basically you put these documents in place for someone else to make decisions for you in the event you can't make financial decisions or decisions about health and medical type decisions. So you appoint somebody that you know and trust. So essentially, that person can make those decisions for you. If you don't have these documents in place, then it can potentially be down to a government body to make those decisions in relation to how your assets are going to be dealt with.
And even if someone doesn't have assets, like let's say for instance you've got, like I've seen like tenants that have come through from Blink Property that have been like, well, I don't own a house, right? I'm just renting a property. Some of the things that I've seen is like, it's not just, if someone was to pass, you've got your super fund, which has like the life insurance and stuff that would go to specific people, but also like children, like if someone is like out beyond the grave, like maybe if you want to talk about like that, like if, say for instance, if someone had 5 kids, where do those kids go? Like, can you direct? Yeah,
absolutely. So in your guardianships, remember these documents don't come into play after you die. They're only effective whilst you're still living, but you've lost mental capacity. So in the guardianship, for example, in relation to who would be the guardian of your children, your enduring guardian or would be able to make that decision. If the other parent was available, obviously they would make the decision for you. It's more common in wills though. So in wills where we put the intentions of who you want to be legal guardian of your minor, that's something that you'll definitely bring up in your will. And obviously it's only your wishes. So I might say I want Nathan to be the guardian of my children, but if the authorities come in and say, hang on, Nathan's not a fit person to look after children, then they can override that.
Cool. I'll be like I'd be like the third child, I'll be the one causing trouble, giving red cordial and cool. And I've seen a few people asking some questions, and I just want to for everyone watching, just to please be patient because we've had some IT difficulties this evening. I'm using my mobile to film this, and we've got Fon back. Good old Fon. Fon was like this pest. You wouldn't leave your children with Fon because he comes on every week and makes sexual comments and really inappropriate stuff. I don't know why. We block him and he comes back, but he's kind of amusing. But ask your questions through, guys. I've only got up to like maybe 5 minutes ago when I had to upload the Facebook on this phone. But questions, shoot them through. I did see a question here regarding to from James. Can you please advise how to protect outside of trust? And I might lead with some questions as well with in regards to a scenario that I like to refer to rather than so a lot of people think with a trust, I'm no accountant, Steve's no accountant. Steve's a lawyer. He's principal lawyer here for those of you that are new tuning in at the moment and that don't know Stephen. Andrew, Fon needs a restraining order. Can you do restraining orders? We can sort out the restraining. We can sort out the restraining order. So we'll get that for Fon. We talk about Fon. He's like this annoying pest that I think he's in his mum's basement.
We'll take care of him.
Yeah, we'll take care of him. So people always ask, like, should I put a property under trust or should I put it under my personal name? I think it was about maybe like 20 properties before I got a trust, and now actually in this cupboard behind me, I'm not going to open it because everyone will see all my entities, but inside this trust, literally from inside this cupboard, sorry, from the top to the bottom here is full of trusts and corporate sort of things. So with it, looking at entities, how you structure it is important. It's not always important to put it into a trust, but if you were to, there are some advantages and disadvantages, some tax advantages and disadvantages. Always think about when I'm buying an asset, if I'm putting under the trust, this trust is got to take care of the assets like 20 years, 30 years down the track. So you might put $1 million worth of property in there, but in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, it might be worth 10 million, 20 million, 30 million as well. Looking at the liabilities, like if it was a negative geared property or if there was some tax benefits there to put against your own personal name, if it's inside the trust, it's sort of locked inside the corporate trust. One thing that I've realised over the years, and this is for something that is ultimately important. This is probably one of the biggest highlights. I call it my asset protection plan. It's my little app that I've got. So looking at it, like if someone wanted to sue you as say if someone wanted to sue me today, cool. I love when people try and sue. I've occasionally had it happen, but try and sue me. We'll take care of that. But looking at when someone's trying to sue, if someone tried to sue me and take a property off me, well, you can try and take it from me, but I've also got an obligation to the bank, right? Like the bank, they have to get through the bank as well. So it's like me and the bank, they have to try and sue. But if I was to owe someone money, for example, let's assume that I've got a $200,000 property, a $100,000 loan with the bank, and $100,000 worth of equity. If I wanted to, give some security to another person like my mum, I trust my mum a lot. Like, bless her, I might get my mum on Facebook Live one day. She'll be funny for everybody. She'll be great. The thing is that if I was to owe my mum some money potentially, she could put a second mortgage on the property, right? Would that be fair to say? If I owed
scenario, yeah.
So then the person would have to sue me, try and take the asset off me, which the bank would say no, but there would be a little spread there. However, then they'd have to then go through my mother. My mum's like a fucking gangster, eh? Like my mum's like 80 years old, she's very sweet and whatnot, but she's like, oh, fucking sort out this person, right? So you'd have to get through me, then get through my bank, then get through, my mother, right? But if I had 10 mortgages to 10 different people that I could potentially owe money to, you'd have to start going through every single layer, right? How would that work for someone? Like, people might owe money to someone, and
Yeah, so in that particular scenario, if you borrowed money from somebody, then that person may be able to have an interest in that property as security for the loan. So we could draft like a loan agreement or a deed of loan between the two parties, and then we could put a caveat or a mortgage on title to secure the creditor's interest in that property.
So if someone tried to sue me, I've got a 200 grand property, I've got a 100 grand loan with one of the big four banks, and a 100 grand loan with, say, for instance, my mum, or another 100 grand loan that I owe my brother, and a 100 grand loan that I owe. Like, these are all people that I owed money to, of course, and people that I trust that I owe money to. Like, is there a limit of how many loans you could put on a property?
Well, you can put, so they rank in priority. So you'll have, Nathan is the owner, then you've got mortgage to whichever bank, and then you might have a mortgage to a second or third party or a caveat.
Yeah.
And after that, they rank in priority. So essentially...
So you could have a trust there, you could have would you have a trust if someone had a trust that you owe them?
If they wanted to secure against the property.
Yeah, could you stack a trust? Could could you buy a property under your own name? Like say, for instance, I buy a property today for 200 grand, have 100 grand loan and 100 grand equity. Could I then have a loan to the trust and have a mortgage to the trust as well? Or
so you might be able to, but if it's a related entity, then it can unravel. So it may or may not be beneficial to do.
Like some people have bloodline trusts and stuff.
Right, so it may work. I mean, every situation is different. Like another person might say, well, I've got a company that I've borrowed money from, and the company would want to secure the loan against my property. You might be able to do that, but because there's that correlation, if you're the sole director and sole shareholder of that company,
they'll come for you as well.
Yeah. So it may not pan out. It may not, work in that.
I'm getting really thoughtful here. I've got paper and whatnot. So let's assume that if I was to have a property for, and these are all hypothetical, guys. Like I'm just asking for my own personal benefit. For myself, let's say I've got a property for 200k, and I've got a 100k loan in it, and then 100k equity, and then I've got 3 of these properties with 100k, 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 100k. So I just drew this up just for an example. So Steve, if I had 3 properties, first one worth 200, second one worth 200, third one worth 200, I've got 3 loans for 100 grand each, so it's a total of 300 grand, and I've got 300 grand worth of equity there, right? If I had a relative that I owed 100,000 or 200,000 to, but I didn't know which loan I wanted to put as a security, could I put a security for the 100,000 equally shared over all of them?
On all the properties?
On each one?
Yeah, well, as long as you've got, so if we were to draft a loan agreement, and as long as the security under that loan agreement lists all the properties that the person's willing to give as security, then yes, you would have an interest, a caveatable interest if you're going to put a caveat, over all the properties if that's the case.
Yeah. So that way, like, it would be, like, pretty good asset protection. If someone tried to sue me, I wouldn't get anything.
Well, insofar as the creditor is concerned, so in this case, the creditor is your mum or whoever's lent you the money. So yes, it's protecting their interest in that property. Yeah. So that if someone was to come after it, they get paid.
So my mum could, they could sue. Let's say it's 200 grand. I've got a 100 grand loan, and my mum has a 100 grand loan on it. They could sue, force the sale of the 200 grand property. The 100 grand has to go back to the bank, and then 100 grand would have to go back to my mum because she had a loan to me that I had to pay her 100 grand back. And then if later on she wanted to lend me 100 grand again, she would do it to the next property.
Yeah, well, they're all secured creditors. Like the most typical example we have of this is where you might have a mum or dad will give me a call and say, look, I want to help my son or daughter get into the property market. I want to give them 100k or 200k to get in as a deposit, but down the track they might get married, and I want to protect my interest insofar as the money I'm lending them. And I'll say that's fine. You can, instead of giving them, because usually they'll ring and say I'm going to give them the money, I'll say lend them the money instead of giving them the money. We'll do a loan agreement between you and your son. We'll put a caveat over the property as a caveatable interest. If then down the track the property had to be sold, or the property was subject to if the son was married and then got separated, well then dad's loan would have to be paid out first before that asset, any equity in the asset could be distributed amongst someone making a claim on that asset.
Yeah. Cool. I just got asked if my mum's hot, Fon's in his mum's basement, I might see Fon later if I go to his house, But I don't like the mum jokes, but I'm sure we could take that offline with Fon, whoever he is. But yeah, cool. So with it, so that would, I guess, because I have people ask me those questions all the time, like, how can they protect their interests, and how can they protect, other people's sort of interests. I just laugh at his messages. It's crazy. He's just an idiot. No, I get it. He's just a serial troll. With it, from an asset protection side of things, that seems like a really good point to protect everyone's interests. So, obviously.
Yeah, we usually recommend for asset protection purposes that you structure your purchases of property or acquisitions before you own. So, for example, if you're buying a property, you sit
Yeah.
down and have a chat with your solicitor and your accountant, and
Yeah.
and you work out whether you're going to put it in your name or your wife's name, or
Yeah.
1% in your name or 99% in her name, or a company or a trust or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the best case scenario is to do that before you acquire the asset. After you acquire the asset, it becomes harder.
Yeah.
Because then if you're going to transfer it, so if you said I want to transfer it from my name to a trust, well, there's going to be
capital gains tax,
stamp duty implications and all that sort of stuff. So
and being able to get that loan as well. Again, like people are finding it difficult to service the debts today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So
makes perfect sense because like my mum gave me life, right? So I don't even know how much I'd have to repay her in life, right? So it's important that obviously you plan before you purchase. But there's a lot of people out there, and I think especially in this period of time, people could have marriage breakdowns, people could have business breakdowns, people could have financial difficulties or whatever the case may be. But it's good to know that people, if someone was going to get into trouble, like someone was going to get a divorce, or someone was going to get sued or go bankrupt or something like that, that the other people that may have helped them in life, family members, whatever, could still be protected inside of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. With that, any other comments while I'm trying to find more comments on here? Question?
Yeah, so I think just to sum up, obviously, will is a must, power of attorney, enduring guardianship. If you get those 3 documents in place, then you've covered you've covered everything that you need to cover. Obviously, with superannuation, you need to make your nomination with your super fund. So, and we usually recommend you make a binding nomination. So super usually passes aside from the will. So when you join a super fund, you nominate who your beneficiaries are. And to be binding, you have to make a binding nomination and renew it every 3 years. Obviously, if you have a self-managed super fund set up, then you've got to refer to your SMSF deed, and that'll explain how the super's divvied up in the event of your death.
Okay, cool. I've got another question here from Tameen. I purchased a block of land that I built a house on under my company. I have. Now I'm having to pay $5,000 land tax every year. Is there a way that I can get the title of the property out of the company name and put it into a personal name? I was advised by my accountant of purchase under the company and not my personal name.
Well, you can do that, but
what are the implications like?
Well, you'll be paying stamp duty. So essentially, you'll have to get a valuation done for stamp duty purposes. So you might say, well, my company's going to sell it to me for $1. Revenue New South Wales doesn't care. They'll want to see that stamp duty's paid on market value, so that can be quite substantial.
But if it's like, say if I own 100% of the company and I own 100% of the, can you transfer it without paying stamp duty?
So you would need to show evidence that that property was actually acquired, that you were the beneficial owner, and that the company was holding it on trust for you, which would be very hard to prove at this stage.
Okay.
So there is an exemption from stamp duty where you've got the beneficial owner, but you need evidence of that.
Okay. And that's a very important question. To me, because I'm hearing a lot of this occurring at the moment, right? I'm hearing people that have been advised from their accountant to go and do silly things like put in a trust. Like, for example, if you need to plan your investment journey. Your investment journey just doesn't start on the day and finish on the day. It's like you need to forecast 5 years down the track and 10 years down the track and be able to prognosticate what's going to occur. Looking at one's position, if you have no property or you have 1 or 2 properties in your possession at this point in time and your accountant says go and put it under a trust, well, you could be paying land tax from day one. That's the biggest thing I'm seeing. And accountants, if you think about it, right, like as a lawyer, for your service, for your fee and whatnot, if someone wants to go do conveyancing matter with Steve, it'll cost a fee for doing the transaction. Someone wants to do a will with you, you'll charge for the will. Someone wants to do a prenup, Steve will charge for the prenup. With an accountant, they get paid, if someone's going to buy a car, they go, I'm going to call the accountant first, right? They call the accountant, ask a million questions, they come in, they do a tax return, they might pay $500, $300, $1,000, $2,000, whatever the case may be. And it's a new revenue stream for a lot of scrupulous sort of accountants out there. So I think it's important to be careful of accountants advising to go straight under trust. Accountants give accountancy advice, but is it the right advice? Well, I'm seeing them do it. It's becoming more and more evident, and I'm sorry to hear, Tamim, that that's occurred on your behalf. If you want to sort of look at how we could sort of unwind that, maybe send us an email. I'll have a look at your position, flick it over to Steve, see if there's anything we can do to sort of, minimise that risk. So, yeah. What have we got? More questions here. Keep the questions coming through, guys. I'm getting to them now. We're running this from a mobile phone device this evening because we've had some IT stuff up here. Cameron, if I have purchased properties in my own name many years ago, what's the easiest way? Okay, so Cameron asked a question. It's been liked a bit. If I've purchased properties in my own name many years ago, what is the easiest way to transfer these properties into a trust or other asset protection? I think we've sort of covered that, but anyone that doesn't is concerned about that asset protection, everybody's position would be unique and different, and there's lots of variables and factors to consider. But we did just cover a situation there by asset protecting properties that are under a personal name today, and being able to still put extra layers of protection there in the future. Peter, Nathan, all brokers are suggesting that rates will not come down. In the meanwhile, yes, that would be the case because the banks have a lot of liability there with people not paying their mortgages and whatnot. However, it will become very competitive in the future as we get to the other side of where we're at the moment. I think we'll see them come down further. Also, realise that all the mortgage brokers and people in finance and whatnot were saying the interest rates would go up 2 years ago. Do you remember on all the mentoring weekends that we did and whatnot? And calling it like 6 months beforehand, this is the specific date that we're going to see rate cuts. I'm a contrarian investor. I look at the fundamentals and the data. I showed you guys last Tuesday when I did the pre-RBA meeting what I look at, some of the data that I look at. I don't know if many brokers out there would fully understand even how currency or money works. So with it, they're entitled to their opinion. I think we're going to see certainly the central banks' rates come down over the course of the next sort of 12 months, 6 to 12 months, and I believe we'll see the US head to negative by the end of the year, which is really exciting. Des, do you think we'll go through a deflationary period before inflation hits? Good question, Des. Thanks for the question. I believe we have been going through deflation. If we're looking at property perspective, we've been going through a deflationary period for the last 3 years. However, we're now entering into an inflation period with low interest rates, high returns, and properties appearing as a very sort of safe haven asset and a flight to safety for people that are losing money in stock markets and super funds and whatnot. If we look at other sort of parts of life, toilet paper is more expensive, people's grocery bills are more expensive, goods and services are becoming more expensive. The money that's being printed at the moment is causing for everything to rise in value. So I encourage everyone at this period of time to take a note, even if you get the catalogues from Coles or Woolworths or whatever. I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to do it. Actually take these catalogues, whatever junk mail you get, keep a few weeks or months worth of them, store them away, and do that maybe every 12 months or whatever. TVs, refrigerators, whatever, and then because having so many of them, you can sort of overlap the data and see what it will look like in a period of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years time, and watch the real world inflation. Watch your money buy you less. And people think we're in for big deflation. I believe via the level of money that they're printing or currency that they're printing in the system at the moment, it is heading us for inflation. It's going to keep us away from deflation and take us straight to inflation. So, but be careful because later on in this cycle, we're going to head straight through the deflation period and out to hyperinflation. Peter, they're saying fixed rates will go up next month. They could possibly go up. next month. Guessing that is, people putting bets on things. I saw interest rates head up at the banks, and we saw that happen in September 2018. However, we saw interest rates come down in June the 4th in 2019. So, it's interesting. Michael, when starting your property investment portfolio, is it best to purchase in your own name, company name, or trust? Maybe I'll leave that for Steve to answer.
Yeah.
Not giving sort of tax advice of that.
So
talk about the benefits of trust.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so usually we say you should sit down and speak to a financial advisor, financial planner, and your accountant. They will discuss and consider your individual circumstances and what's going to be best for you. Insofar as the ownership structure, so obviously you can own a property in your individual name. There's a little bit more liability there. You can own it in a company, so you can set up a company. You can set up a trust where you've got a corporate trustee, or you can have an individual trustee. So there's several methods of ownership. It's what's going to be best for you isn't going to be best for everybody, so you really need a tailored approach. And once you've had a chat with your financial advisor, accountant, and with us, and then you can sort of say, okay, well, this is the best way to do it for me.
Cool. And one other thing as well is it's important to look at from an accountant's perspective, because most of it comes there's different ways. Like, people can get sued in a trust. You can still chase and go after people in a trust, and trust can lay asset protection there. As we talked about beforehand, if you're just joining in now, go back and watch earlier on this video, some really golden bites there of how to protect yourself outside of a trust. What we're going to look at is land tax. We're going to look at disposal of the asset. We're going to look at what it will look like. Say if you've got a husband and a wife, and the wife wants to have children, and then she decides not to go back to work. Will she be carrying the positive cash flow properties? Will you be a high income earner and having to sell the asset with a profit whilst you're in that income? Like, when are you going to dispose of them? There's a lot of factors that come into play. So in general, what I find dealing with, I've worked with thousands, have been a part of over 10,000 property transactions over the last decade, is that probably about 90%, 95% of investors for the first sort of half dozen to 10 generally buy under their personal names to take advantage of certain sort of land tax thresholds and tax deductions and whatnot. Looking at one sort of finance and tax side of things, I've got investors which had they're on 100 grand a year paying tax, 150 grand a year paying tax. They get themselves to a point where they're paying almost zero tax, and then they start purchasing on the trust to take advantage of the trust. So question here from Aileen. How do you protect your assets if you're not married, i.e. boyfriend, girlfriend, etc.? Doesn't the de facto kick in after a certain amount of years together? How would you protect assets in this situation, Steve? So I'll leave a tricky one for you.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, if you're in a relationship and you're looking to protect your assets, so the best way to do it would be to enter a binding financial agreement with your partner.
So that would be like a prenup.
A prenup, So entering one of those agreements. Otherwise, if you purchase a property in your individual name, and then you're in that relationship with that person, and then the relationship falls apart, whether it's a de facto relationship or marriage, then that asset that you've got then becomes assets of the relationship, which is subject to being divvied up between the parties.
And everyone's position is different on that front. What is someone bringing? Like, is there someone that's coming with children already? Is there someone that doesn't have children? Is it two people that are teenagers and they're high school sweethearts? They're both broke as fuck. There's lots of things to bring into the situation. But for from that perspective, once again, you need to look at your own personal situation. Before coming into the relationship, is there any people you think of, like, mum and dad helped me out for 200 grand beforehand? Is there loans that are being given from a sibling? You need to look at all of that and go to Steve to go, okay, this is what I can remember getting as loans and whatnot, and sort of work out a strategy of if you can go back in retrospect and sort of protect yourself a little bit on that front. But I always think, like, I've got over like 80 different companies that have sort of structured all these weird ways that someone wants to come at me. Good luck trying to filter. The messier it is, the harder it is for a lawyer, and the more expensive it's going to be for that person trying to sue you on the other side. So, Fon cracks me up every week. I think he's in his basement going at it again. See him, he only comes online, messages a few things, gets everyone all, fired up, and then he disappears for like 5 minutes. So I wonder what he's doing in that time, right in his parents' basement. Busy. Cosmo, hey Nate, is it a good idea to take the government's offer to take 10 grand out of your super? Do you think this will impact finance in the future? Good question. Thanks for asking that question, Cosmo, because there is a few things that I'm seeing from an aspect. Just checking out questions coming through on the feed. A lot of people are sort of at the moment trying to put their mortgages on hold. Some people are trying to take money out of the super. Everybody's position is different, right? Flick us an email personally at the admin at B.Invested email. I'll get my team to have a chat and work out a few different strategies. Important to speak to a financial advisor, most importantly, to see how it will affect you. Some people putting their mortgages on hold has totally screwed themselves up for pulling out equity. So you've got to look at the ramifications. If you put your mortgage, I haven't put my mortgages on hold. I would love to put my mortgages on hold when I get a spare hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours to call the banks. I will be putting my mortgages on hold, but my position is different because I'm not going to be getting a loan anytime soon, right? And I'm going to be saving 100 grand a month. For the next person that's going to be pulling equity out sort of next month, is it the wisest thing to do by putting your mortgage on hold? Because then you're demonstrating to the bank that you are unable to pay your mortgage, right? Because you have to demonstrate that you can't pay your mortgage in order to be able to get the mortgage holiday. So very important to look at the ramifications. So Cosmo, flick me an email and I'll get in. I'll have a look at your position and come back to you just with some strategies and speak to one of the financial advisors here. Got a question here. Fon needs a restraining order. I've got 6 likes on that, so if you can organise a restraining order, that would be great. Lynn Kingston says, hi Stephen, now I know what you look like. So you guys have been chatting for a long while. James wrote it, would you mind repeating what a prenup is now called, and can you let us know how to get in touch with Zenith Legal and Steve to discuss? Steve, what's it called again?
It's a binding financial agreement.
Binding financial agreement. It's a new word for a prenup. If you want to get in contact with Steve, just James, I'll hook you up with Steve with a chat because I know your position. For everyone else, just flick an email over just saying want to chat to Stephen or whatever in the email, and there's an email address that's admin at B.Invested. E.T. Fon Home, Jacob, hi guys, keep up the good work. The long-term trend for quality Australian property is up. Exactly. What I'm seeing out there in the market is very, very crazy at the moment. I'm seeing a lot of activity, a lot of under contracts, a lack of stock. I actually had another buyer's agent call me up, someone you would know from way back in the day, right? Way back in the day. They actually called me up and had a chat yesterday. I don't talk to buyer's agents out there because 99% of them are scammers. Everyone thinks they're some property fucking guru nowadays. But this guy, top bloke, and he has a similar sort of business to my buyer's agency. But we're talking about the market out there, and he was even seeing that that the trends were like that, and there's lack of stock out there in the marketplace. Talking to lots of real estate agents out there, lack of stock, a lot of buyers. Is a very hot market out there at the moment. So there's a lot of people who are out there in the marketplace who are freaking out and are going to look at this period of time and might even need to come and see you because they'll be so messed up. They might need a power of attorney or something because they've been in some sort of mental facility because they'd be like, shit, why didn't I take advantage of 0% interest rates? Interest rates are at 25 basis points at the RBA. Money has never been cheaper. Very interesting time. Ryan, hi Nathan and Steve, great info. What is the rate for Zenith Legal to put together a will and a couple of properties and kids involved? Probably best to flick an email over to Steve. One thing about Steve is there's lawyers that, they take your wallet, rings and watches and you have nothing left to put in your will. Steve is very, very detailed, right? I've never met a lawyer so detailed as Steve, not McKnight, Sidorovski. This is Steve Sidorovski for those of you that are tuning in, principal lawyer at Zenith Legal. Steve is very good at what he does, very detailed at what he does, and very cost affordable, and that's why he represents thousands of you guys in the community. So, what other question we've got here? Just trying to get through all the junk from Fon. Fon, wow. Fon is from the cabal. Wow. Wow. That's crazy. Well, that's funny, man. If you have a loan agreement and caveat on the property, would that affect your serviceability to purchase future properties? I might answer that one on Steve's behalf, and Steve will join in as well. So if you do have a loan agreement or I call it the asset protection plan. For me, that's what I see it as. But Steve, is just there purely to help you guys, if you have got a unique situation like that, to help you with the mortgage over it. But if you did have a loan agreement and a caveat over the property, it would hurt your servicing. It wouldn't hurt the servicing perspective as far as you being able to get a loan, but if you wanted to refinance a loan, you would have to get those mortgages discharged from the property. So it is important to understand having multiple loans stacked on a property and having it structured in a certain way is not for everybody. It is only from some people's perspective as an asset protection mechanism. It will not affect your servicing from I've got a loan and done a credit hit perspective. However, it would hurt if you're trying to release equity and move and refinance that property. It would keep you trapped to that bank. So there is lots of sort of moving parts in that. When people do get these sorts of structures, it's important to get advice from a few different perspectives to start off with. And that's why it would be important to have a chat with someone like myself to look at, okay, what does your position look like? Maybe have a chat with the finance guys. I was just looking over there like they're still here in the office at 10 o'clock at night. But it would be important to look at the finance guys to see what implications there would be from finance, and then ultimately get Steve to action the best plan of attack for you to protect your position and secure your position there. So, Zelda, can you block that idiot Fon? I will be blocking him. He keeps changing his name, so I will be blocking him after here again. Andrew, do you know if the governments will introduce land taxes? Will they be grandfathered? It's an interesting question. So, have you, the stamp duty?
On land tax, there was so recently, if you have tenants that are having trouble paying their rent, there's going to be some sort of subsidy for landholders in relation to land tax. So if you can prove that your tenant's not paying their rent, you got to contact Revenue New South Wales or wherever your property is, and then that might be able to discount your land tax.
Yeah, cool. So, I remember when I opened up this laptop that I was trying to use multiple laptops, and when I opened it up, I was looking. There was the bankruptcy website, how they changed the bankruptcy laws and chasing debt. Like, I know a few people that have debt collection businesses, and the ability to chase that debt's difficult at the moment. So yeah, I think I hate paying my land tax. I always leave it to the future because that's a new, like literally $100,000 a year in land tax. I could spend $100,000 buying a property cash, right? So I want to pay that shit in the future.
Yeah.
So with it, looking at changes potentially in land taxes, I don't see, apart from being able to claim some financial hardship. However, the stamp duty, there was just recently some talks about making stamp duty an expense. So instead of having it like $40,000 up front, they might charge you like $4,000 a year for the next 10 years.
Okay.
Which would be like very ugly in my opinion, right? But the opportunity that I see with if they did do this would mean that total upfront cost, right? Say someone on $1 million property, they might need to save $250,000, so $50,000 for stamp duty, $200,000 for the deposit, $250,000 to get in for a 20% deposit. However, if you didn't have to pay that stamp duty and you didn't have to pay the 20%, just went for a 5%, you'd only need $50,000 to get into a $100,000 property at a 2% or 3% mortgage interest rate. That's like $500 or $600 a week to own your own $1 million property. So if they do that, it will be interesting. But do you think if they made it an annual expense for stamp duty that the ones previously would be grandfathered?
I don't think that they would, and I don't know that that would even come about because one, they make too much revenue out of stamp duty, and they know that you can't actually acquire that property without paying stamp duty. So you can't settle a property until you pay your stamp duty. So if you're going to pay by installments, then they're going to have people chasing that payment. So it's going to be
they're going to get greater.
Exactly. So I personally don't think that that's going to actually come out. I think that the incentives for first home buyers. Exemptions on stamp duty will continue, but as far as paying stamp duty after the fact and by installments, I can't see that happening at the moment.
Yeah, it would be very much difficult to make that happen, but if they did, I would think they'd have to grandfather, because if you paid $50,000 stamp duty last year, they're charging you $5,000 a year in stamp duty annually. Like, it'd be very
you'd have to have a commencement date, obviously, but if you've paid that stamp duty on your purchase, then you've already paid it. So then you're just going to move on to your next transaction.
True. Lynn, if you bought a property in a personal name for say $10,000, then pull equity, can you then sell it to your super fund for $10,000 and not get the shit from the ATO? That is a funny comment. However, if you pulled the equity out of that $10,000 property and say you had a $150,000 loan, you buy a property for $10,000, you pull out the equity at $150,000 from it, so then you got a $150,000 loan on a $10,000 purchase. You would then not be able to shift it to the super fund because you would have a loan of $150,000 to pay out before you shifted it there. But yeah, be interested. But if you were fortunate enough to find a $10,000 property in your personal name, and you were to be able to use $10,000 from your super fund to pull out and then purchase it, that would be a different story. But I'm not here to give financial advice. But that's probably another subject for us to have a chat about one day. Stephanie, welcome on board. It's the whole family event here. Jacob, hi. Thanks, Nathan, for filling us in and informing us of anything we should have been taught at school. Exactly. People go to a 12-year indoctrination camp to become brainwashed. Then they go home and watch TV. I'm humbled by the fact that you guys tune on Tuesdays and want to listen to what me and Stephen have to say. So we're humbled by that. Question here from Jacob. If you do not have a will and own properties, then pass away, this is called dying interstate. Can government take these properties away from your family? Good question.
Okay, so if you die without having a will, then there is a set formula of distribution. So if you've got surviving parents or siblings or children, it would go to them. The issue with not having a will is that it'll take longer to distribute your assets, and it'll cost more money to distribute your assets. The only time the government will get your assets is if you die and you don't have any surviving relatives. Then again, there's a set formula, and I think it goes, I'm not sure exactly where it goes to. I think it might be parents, children, siblings, maybe even aunts and uncles, and then if there's no one, then it goes to the government.
And it's I always get emails from like some Sheikh Abdul from like Nigeria saying some uncle I had over there passed.
Worth checking out.
It always cost me $100 million to get it. But,
That's right.
but the reality of a will and the importance of it is you wouldn't drive your car uninsured. You wouldn't leave your house uninsured, but you'd leave your life's work, your family, your spouse, your children. You know, we saw that article like 6 months ago where the lady husband died, and then the woman was forced out of the house because the probate or whatever took too long and went past the mortgage default, and she was stuck without a house and on the street and financial destitute. So, you know, $1,000 or whatever it is for getting a will that Steve can do. Someone asked beforehand, do you need a new will every time you
acquire a new asset?
Property? Yeah.
Depending on how your will is drafted. So, we'll sit down and talk about how we recommend that you draft a will. And then, obviously we take your instructions, and if you want to put all those assets in your will and then you sell one of them, well, then you have to make a new will. But there's ways around it, and there's ways to make a will that you don't have to change all the time.
Okay, cool. Fantastic. Cool. Tamim, thanks for the information, Nathan. I'm the sole director of a company and my wife is a beneficiary. Am I able to put the property in both of our sole names? Anything is possible on that front. If you want to, just take a property out of your name, put in, or take it out of a company and put in your name, you can do that. As Stephen said beforehand, the stamp duty would be liable, but then you also have to look at if you've got a loan attached to the property, can you get a new loan can you service for a debt today under your personal? You might have bought a property 5 years ago, but may not be able to service at the moment. So a lot of other factors in there, but if you'd like to flick us an email, I'll see what I can do to make that happen. Myself, my finance team and Stephen all work together in order to get the results to come through. I was actually thinking about it beforehand because I got an email from someone. I don't know if he's watching at the moment, but he sent me an email wanting to buy some more properties. And as soon as I say it, Steve is going to go, no, well, you could be excited, right? I've got one of the most exciting deals I've ever done for a client at the moment, right? And this is a very structured deal, and it's not even a property. It's not even the property that's the exciting part. We have someone selling off, and when this goes through, I'm going to get my investor to come in the office. As a part of me doing this deal, I asked the investor to come in and actually for us to draw it on the whiteboard and show everyone how he was able to change his position. But through having the right team, we've got a client which isn't getting lending today is very different to when they got their lending beforehand, and he's selling off a large asset. So there's a big asset, it's got a big loan attached to it, and they wanted to build a property portfolio. And the property's settling, I believe, on the 22nd. See his face smile. He goes, I know who you're talking about, right? This guy, was able to, from structuring his position correctly, sell off a property he had for a massive figure and then be able to replace it with 3 new assets that would attach to that same loan. So it was done with a security swap. The bank said no, but we said yes, we're still going to be able to do it. And Steve has been able to nurture 10 sales for the outgoing property, as well as 3 sales with the incumbent sort of properties, and in turn be able to do some security swaps in the back end. So, a lot of people think when selling off a property that it's you can't can't buy another property, but you could technically have a property which you sell it off and be able to do a security swap with some sort of creativity there. And there's been times which I know Steve came up with years ago when I got stuck and I couldn't settle a property when I was buying, right? People say, should I use a conveyancer, should I use a lawyer? There's a very big difference when it comes to a lawyer or a conveyancer and what they can actually do. And I know Steve's very humble and he's not going to sit here and go, I'm the best lawyer in the country. But looking at some stuff like I had a settlement go through and I couldn't settle on it, right? And I was going to lose like a 10% deposit. I've never lost $1 of deposits from buying properties. And looking at what we're able to do, we were able to stack a new buyer behind it with a back-to-back settlement. And we did a sale where the incoming buyer purchased the property for a couple of dollars extra and got out of the deal. I think in some of the instances, I've done it a few times over the years, we've actually made profit from Steve being creative by stacking the settlement. So you can have structured sort of settlements and whatnot. to me. I can see that you wrote there, what is my email? My personal email is nathan@binvested.com.au. However, I get like thousands of emails a day. The best email, if you want to send an email to the team, which is admin@binvested.com.au. If you'd like to CC me on it, great, but make sure you put the admin@binvested.com.au, and we'll all be in touch. Jacob, great info. Explained thoroughly, clearly, in simple terms. Love it. As lawyers, people normally, lawyers, they're difficult to deal with. They're boring. Steve's the biggest gentleman, right? The biggest gentleman that I've ever come across, and has a good personality. So being able to not get too technical.
Plain English.
Yeah, plain English. Jenny, my son, 19, is about to buy his first rental property, and we need to get in front of you guys to get him set up for asset protection. Jenny, reach out, myself, the team, Stephen. A lot of people don't realise, people see me on the video camera going, oh, hey guys, talking about some random stuff, talking about properties, doing renos, whatever. However, part of the B.Invested sort of corporation, we've got, I'm looking at out in front of me here about 40 desks of staff just here in this office. Stephen's got his own office down in southwestern Sydney. We've got national offices of different staff. I'm only as good as the people that I've got around me. Stephen is, the bodyguard of everyone's portfolios for protection and whatnot. So reach out and is it safe to, Andrew? So is it safe to have a girlfriend move into your property?
In what respect?
And it's in a legal matter.
If you're living together,
yeah,
then you could be classed as being in a de facto relationship, and then if you're in a de facto relationship, then you're basically, so you may as well be married for legal purposes. So if you're going to let your girlfriend move in with you, then you risk being classed as a de facto couple, and hence those risks that come up.
Yeah, and a de facto would be 6 months of living together, 2 years. There's different stages.
There is different
very grey area. We don't want to get into.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that. I'm not a family law expert, but there, I just say that if you are going to be living together, then you risk being classed as being in a de facto relationship, which has legal implications for your assets.
Joint bank accounts, all those sort of things that are, if you do have the questions and want specific, reach out. I'll get Stephen and the team to be able to help you on this front. Toby, when New South Wales stamp duty, will transferring a property from your personal name to a company trust be free? I would imagine if they were, we did cover this just recently, it would technically be free to transfer it, but then you'd be liable if they grandfathered stamp duty under your personal name and then you move it. Then you would be liable for that new transaction. I would imagine it's too early to come up with all the exacts. I just want everybody to know to smash up the likes because I've got this phone here. It's very difficult for me to block whilst watching a live video, but I was able to find our friend Fon and able to block him in the middle of our live stream. So he's gone for another week. And hopefully he can fuck off for good. But anyway, he entertains some and annoys others. Thanks, Nathan, for the early information. How can I avoid stamp duty when I transfer a property from my personal name to a company name or trust? Can you do it? If you set up a trust, let's say you set up a trust today, can you transfer it and not pay stamp duty if it's from Stephen to Stephen's trust?
Only if you can show that the trust was set up when you originally acquired that asset, and the trust was the beneficial owner of the asset, and you were holding it for the trust.
Okay.
So generally, no, unless you've got evidence to suggest otherwise.
Yeah. Cool. We'll reach out to Steve. I just saw recently Fon got back after we blocked him. We'll get rid of him again. He's just a serial sex pest and Facebook Live pest. James, in regards to first homeowners grant, what is being given now? Also, do you have to take up this offer on your first home, or can you save it? Just use it once, maybe on a more expensive purchase. I know we've spoken about it in the past, and it's constantly changing. But can you technically, if you're buying a first property today, could you potentially come back and claim some grant later on if you don't claim this one and it's not
Yeah, so this does change, very often. But at the moment, if you purchase a property as an investment, as your first property, you're not entitled to any sort of concessions or exemptions. But if you have bought your second property and that's a property that you're going to move into, at the moment, if it's a brand new property, you could still claim the $10,000 first home grant.
Okay.
So, but you won't be entitled to any exemption from stamp duty.
Cool. I think it's something important, like from time to time, people, like if you are looking at, getting that first home owner, Steve is the expert at being able to find these things to be able to help people. I just saw that the fondler came back with the GTT fondler as his name. He just won't fuck off, but I've blocked him again, which is great. It looks like you've got some fans, right? I've got fans, which is harassing us here, but we've got Mahesh just wrote a really lovely note as feedback, which is really cool. Mahesh just said Steve is a rock star when it comes to conveyancing. So yeah, high five, Steve.
Yeah,
Good job, everyone. I've never ever heard one bad thing, not from anybody. Right? Imagine being and not hearing one bad thing ever. Right? Steve is the biggest gentleman. Everyone, his biggest heart, biggest what he does. And how he conducts business is really cool. So it's good to see the positive feedback that always come through. Cameron asked, what is Steve's email? Does he do straightforward conveyancing as well? Yes, Steve specialises. Steve's core fundamental in Zenith Legal is property and property related matters and acquisitions. You can reach out to Stephen at, what's your email?
Yep, Stephen@zenithlegal.com.au.
Stephen@zenithlegal.com.au. If you'd like, Steve's a busy lawyer. If you'd like to send an email to the team, my guys can organise a meeting for you at a time with Stephen, or you can contact Stephen directly yourself. So I can't really see any more questions because we have had technical difficulties this evening using mobile phones to conduct our Facebook Live. But just a bit of a recap and any other thoughts, this evening, make sure you've got a will.
Yep.
What other things should people look at?
A will, a power of attorney, enduring guardianship.
Yeah.
If you require additional protection, and a binding financial agreement between you and your partner.
So binding financial agreement is a prenup, what was called a prenup beforehand. You can get them before, during,
or after the relationship. So it's basically an agreement where you sit down with your partner and decide that this is the way that the assets of the relationship are going to be distributed.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, a lot of people are going into relationships with assets, so they're going and drafting these agreements to say that if this relationship ends, then I'm going to take my assets with me, and you take your assets with you, and there'll be no issue.
So it's important on that front, right? Like always hear, if there's a divorce, the lawyer always wins, right? But if you can actually protect yourself at the start, like a prenup or a binding financial agreement isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're just protecting yourself from stupid expenses should something go wrong, which is like an insurance policy. So important to look at that. So binding financial agreements, as well as if someone has got a business, has got an issue where they're going through at the moment, and they need some sort of asset protection, with divvying up like secondary mortgages and whatnot, reach out to Steve. On that note, I think we've covered off a lot. Is there anything else that you'd like to say or comment on?
I think people just need to keep doing what they're doing. It is uncertain times, but if you ever have any questions or you're concerned or you're worried, you can reach out to us. We can answer questions. Obviously, your financial advisors, your accountants. There's all sorts of people out there that can give you advice. There's a lot of information out there from the government in relation to how they can assist you as well. So be mindful of what's out there and take advantage of what's out there. If you are in a situation where you've got financial hardship, take advantage of the offerings out there.
It's a great time to be alive. Next Monday, turn 35 years old. I couldn't have asked for anything greater than this scamdemic at the moment. You know, there's opportunities galore. There is pain out there. Like, you know, we all have our own sort of, you know, positions and things that do go wrong. We're all affected in this sort of differently. I know that Steve's going through a point where, you know, it's tongue-in-cheek as much as it is. You know, people are in lockdown together. People are handling difficult situations and not being able to come through it, right? There's lots of people wanting, you know, divorce help through Stephen, right? And, you know, Stephen, as I was saying before, and as Steve said before, he specialises in, you know, property matters. However, our firm looks after, you know, all different sort of matters, whether it be family law or, you know, other people. Different,
put you in touch with the right people.
And the right people. So, and if you want to reach out to Steve, Zenith Legal, Stephen at zenithlegal.com.au, or email the team and we'll be able to hook up the meeting for you with Steve. So thanks for coming in tonight, Steve.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.